lot of episodes.
Doing good?
Yeah, I'm feeling good.
Doing good? I'm doing good.
Feeling good. I made hella money at work yesterday, so just chilling today.
It's nice. That's really
Feel alive. I walked into the gym. I didn't even realize how tired I was. I took pre-workout because I'm back in my pre-workout addiction.
good.
There's gonna be episodes where you can just see me cycle through it, like episodes where I'm just, and like, dude, I didn't even realize how tired I was until I walked past this mirror and I just see these huge bags under my eyes and like my eyes are just bloodshot red and I was like, oh. But it's good.
Nice.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm a bit tired too. I got to bed a little later than I should have last night. I just watched a few movies. Some of them were pretty good. One of them was like a...
Adult films? Or?
One of them was it was kind of like a romance movie. I think it was called About Time. It's about this dude who learns that he has the ability to travel back in time, and like how he uses it to like fall in love with some chick or whatever. It was pretty good. It was a nice movie.
Dope.
They tried to pull on my heartstrings quite a bit, but it
Did you
didn't.
cry?
Not quite.
Have
It
you
was
ever
too,
watched
like-
a movie that made you cry?
Yeah, I have.
Which
I think
one?
so. Let me think. I can't remember. I was young and it wasn't really a movie. And this
It was
kid-
Clifford the Big Red Dog.
It was actually an episode of X-Files. I don't know if you've ever seen X-Files.
I have, because she watches it.
Yeah, so it was this one episode of X-Files where there was like, I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was like some autistic or like retarded dude and like his sister or something like that, and
We're getting canceled.
there was like this one scene where like he had like killed somebody and was like getting arrested or something like that.
The autistic guy did?
Yeah, and so like he was getting taken away or something like that, and then he was like talking to his sister, and he was like, actually, in hindsight, it's actually kind of funny because, well, it's not funny at all. It's really sad, but yeah, just the way he was talking to her about how he's like sorry and how he's sad that he's not gonna be able to see her anymore made me cry.
Damn.
Because he was all autistic and shit and like stuttering, and it made me sad.
I don't remember like all the movies that made me cry, but I have a pretty strong guess that I'm pretty sure one of them was The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
That's a tough one.
That one I was like, I don't know if tears came out, but like definitely towards the end of that movie I was just like,
I think Schindler's List
Man.
actually made me cry in hindsight.
what is that about?
That's the same thing about the Holocaust.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just tough. Especially when there's kids. It's
Yeah.
because our primal instinct. But especially like when there's just kids like in pain or being hurt, I'm just like, oh, god damn it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's been a few things that made me cry, but I don't remember them very much. Yeah, I'm kind of blanking on the emotional movies I've seen. It's more music. Music will get me more than a movie will.
Yeah. Dude, I remember, and like this is, we'll start the topic in a minute, but like I remember, like I don't think I've ever, no, like music has definitely made me cry on certain occasions, but the craziest experience I've ever had with music, well, like not the most amazing one, but the craziest one was the first time I ever took acid. And I was listening to all this like weird indie music Sepp showed me. Like, do you know Beach House? Beach House is like kind of like Tame Impala, but like more trippy. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna put my headphones in. And I put my headphones in like this and clicked play. And I felt the music like shoot through the veins and arteries in my arm. It was so weird. Like it was like I could feel the guitar crawl up my arm, and I ripped my earbuds out and I didn't listen to music for the rest of the night. I'm like, I can't handle
It's too powerful.
It's too powerful.
Alright, we should probably get to the topic now.
Yeah. So today we're talking about.
I don't even know how to put it. You could say it's like the gap. We can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll classify it as like the gap.
Yeah.
That's probably what I'll name the episode.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, why don't you explain it, because you were watching the video on it.
So the basic idea is that when we're young, like in our late teens and early 20s, specifically between men, I'd say, there's not too much of a gap. Like, yeah, some of us are more well endowed with certain genetic advantages. Like, yeah, some of us are taller, some of us might have, more or better bone structure, but we're all kind of broke.
Yeah.
Not a lot of us are like super fit. Not a lot of us have the greatest social skills. So we're all kind of on the same playing field.
Right.
But some of us spend our time going out to bars and partying and drinking a lot of the time, and we're basically perpetual alcoholics. That's a lot of us.
Yeah.
And there's others who are kind of just doing a normal thing. They're just, they're not alcoholics or anything. They're not partying all the time. They're just kind of, going to school, learning stuff, going to internships and doing whatnot. And there's other people who are trying to do as much as they can. They're consistently working out, they're reading, they're meditating, they're taking care of their skin and their health, and trying to start businesses and learn new skills. And so we're all doing different things, but we don't really see the results of those things immediately. So when we're in our 20s, you don't see much of a gap, even between the people who are doing different things. But then 5 years later, that gap becomes a little bit more apparent. When you're 25, and let's say you were the last person I described who was doing the most. They were doing all the good things, all the self-improvement that they could be doing. Well, they're going to look at all their peers who are 25. They're going to look at the dude who's the alcoholic in college. They're going to look at the dude who is just kind of doing the normal thing. And he's going to begin to see like a pretty significant gap. And that gap's going to be even more apparent when he's 30 and then when he's 35. And so that's the basic idea of the gap, is that the things you do today aren't going to necessarily show themselves. Like the fruits of your labor aren't going to be apparent until maybe a little bit later.
Right. Well, and especially with especially with the extremely like detrimental things. Like if you're like just drinking every single day of the week, like say even if it's just like a couple of beers at night, like say you're just drinking like half a 6-pack or a 6-pack at night, like you're gonna be okay, like you're not gonna be hungover when you're coming into work, like you might have like a slight headache, like you're still gonna be able to function fine. But you do that over 5 years, like you're gonna see a dramatic like inability to like work as good as you can or communicate as good as you can or have the relationships you want to have, because you've spent all your like the resources we've talked about, time, energy, and money pushing it this way.
Right. Yeah, and it is really a gradual thing too. Like the decline is gradual as well, because you might gain 1% body fat a year, like you're not going to notice it.
Yeah.
But let's say you start off, you're 20 and you're 15% body fat, which is already, I guess, kind of high if you're 20, but not all in great shape, right? So let's say you're 15% body fat, you're 20, but then you spend your 20s drinking and going out and not taking care of your health. Well, by the time you're 30, okay, well now you're like 23% body fat.
Yeah.
And you're like, what happened? It's like, well, you didn't take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So, that's the gap in a nutshell.
Right. And I think like an interesting point is that we were kind of talking about before the podcast is like the like idea of age and the way age is looked at in society. Like, and for anyone watching, like when you think about like a 40-year-old man, like what do you think about? Pause. Let him answer.
Yeah, we're waiting, guys.
For me, like I know that I think about like a 40-year-old man as like somebody who's washed up, like literally in my head, and like this isn't something that I even see in my immediate life, like with like my dad or like really any of my relatives or men around me so much.
It's just how it's shown in media. And the average 40-year-old dude that you see.
Yeah, the average 40-year-old man, I think about somebody who's like dissatisfied in a career, who doesn't have a lot of free time, is unhappy in a family, who's overweight, who doesn't exercise, balding, all those things. And like so much of the time we get stuck in this idea that like, oh, that's just inevitable. That's going to come. Like no matter what I do now, it doesn't matter. When I'm 40, I'm just going to be washed out and my life's going to suck and everything's going to go to shit.
Yeah.
And that's not the case, like what you were discussing about in the gap is this idea that like what we're doing right now matters so much. And especially if you're 20.
Yeah.
Because we have so much time right now. And if you spend that time even just doing kind of good things.
If you're 20 years old and you spend the next 20 years consistently working out, taking care of your diet and your health,
yoked.
Are you gonna be fat as fuck at 40?
No.
Are you gonna be washed up at 40 and looking like a fucking fat sack of shit? No, you're not, because you spent the last 20 years hitting the gym 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Right? But
or doing your best to.
Yeah, just doing whatever you can to really take care of your health for all that time. You're going to be scores above and beyond the average 40-year-old dude.
Right.
You didn't. So you don't have to be washed up, balding. You might mean balding is kind of out of your control somewhat, but you can still be yoked and bald. You know, that's cool.
Yeah, I know some yoked and bald guys.
And it's the same thing with your finances, and it's a lot more recognized with finances. It's like, yeah, when you're 20, you're broke, but you know, a lot of people don't realize how wealthy you can be when you're 40 if you just do the right things. Like if you spend your 20s really taking care of your finances instead of spending it in bars and clubs and eating out and I don't know, doing whatever the hell people spend their money on. When you're 40, if you invested that money, invested your time in developing new skills or starting businesses, you could be multi-millionaire in your 40s.
Right. No, and definitely like the interesting question that just popped in my head is, do you think, and this might tie into just stuff we've talked about before, which is just having good skills, like learning how to manage your resources and like having discipline and like kind of the reason we started the podcast in general. But do you think the fact that like the idea of being washed up at 30 or washed up at 40 in society plays into people's inability to actually execute like better skills in their 20s?
Yeah, I think so, because then they fall into the mentality like, oh, well, when I'm 30 and 40, I'm going to be washed up, I'm going to be old, I'm not going to have like the physical ability or the energy.
It feels like they have no control
time.
over it.
Yeah. And so they're like, well, since I'm already going to be washed up, might as well enjoy my 20s and just party and do whatever. But not realizing that the reason they're going to be washed up in their 40s is because they're partying in their 20s.
They got it flipped.
Yeah, they've got it flipped around.
Right.
Because they just don't have they don't see how their habits right now will translate into the future.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think finances is a really interesting one too, because like I know a lot of like make money passively, like coaches and entrepreneurs online, like the biggest thing you're going to hear any of those people talk about is real estate.
Yeah.
Like if you can get real estate, and especially if you can get like a fourplex or an apartment complex or something like that, like you might be damn near set for life, you know, if you're willing to live in somewhat of like a certain bounds with your money. And like you were saying, you know, like if you don't go out and spend that extra money, and let me preface this with like the biggest thing I hear most 30 and 40-year-olds talk about is not having enough time.
Yeah.
They're like, I got kids now, I got this job, like I work 9 to 5, I don't have enough time to do whatever I want, you know, like, oh, I guess I'll just wait till retirement. Then you wait till you're 60, you know, and then you're really screwed.
Yeah.
But like if you're just a little bit smarter than maybe you're required to be with your money, and you put a little bit away and you invest it and you don't let it just die from inflation in a bank account, like you might be able to just afford a property or a couple properties by the time you're 35 that will get you way out of your 9 to 5 job, especially if you don't want to live lavishly.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want a Lamborghini or a Mercedes or, you know, like a yacht or anything like that, just put some money away for 15 years. You could probably not have a job by the time you're 35. And you'll have no friends that are willing to go out with you because they'll all be stuck in a job too, you know? Like, and that's the other thing I was thinking about is, you know, like maybe like some of the downsides of like making that choice to do the right thing in your 20s is that once you start to see that gap, it's like,
well, dude, here's the thing.
It's harshly apparent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're not gonna have. I thought you were gonna say like it might be tough because when you are at that gap, when you are 30, you're not gonna have like people around or anything.
Yeah.
But I was gonna
say,
might
have better people around. Yeah. You might have better company.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. You'll have fewer people, but you'll have better company.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the people that will be around who also have that free time, who also have financial stability, who are also ripped and yoked and beautiful and have taken care of themselves are going to be much more enjoyable people than like Sally you meet on a Saturday morning to complain about your 9 to 5 with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think that like the biggest like takeaway that I would want to give the viewer here is that to stop thinking about being 30 or 40 as like something like you're hitting the wall. It's not the case, especially for men. Yeah. For women, it's a little bit different.
Well, because you want to have babies probably around then.
Right. Yeah. Or even earlier. You probably, as a woman, you probably want to have babies in like your late 20s.
Yeah.
but for men it's very different. If we're looking at just like sexual market value, as in like when are you the most attractive to the opposite gender? You're actually kind of at your lowest in your teens and early 20s.
Right.
Now it doesn't seem that way to a lot of guys because they're in a certain ecosystem. Like when you're in high school, for example, the ecosystem is more about like just your general looks and your social status, and so you're kind of in like a small little pond, and so you don't see that you as an 18-year-old are not desired by the majority of the market. You might be desired in your school because you're in a small ecosystem.
Yeah.
Same thing for when you go to college. You're in a bit larger ecosystem. Let's say you're 21, you're a good-looking dude. You might be, getting a lot of girls there. But what you don't realize is that you're actually just a fucking loser. You're a pretty loser, but you're a loser. And so by the time you're 23, you're going to realize you're not getting the kinds of girls that you were before, and you don't know why. It's because you don't have that social status you had in college.
Right.
And so when people talk about peaking in high school or peaking in college, it's just because they had some social status in that small little pond. They were a big fish in a small pond.
Right.
And then they
had no idea what the real world was actually like.
Then they hit 25 and they're like, what the hell? Where'd all the girls go? Why don't I have the status I had before? And it's because you spent your time in bars and clubs with the pretty girls in college. And, that's fun. I'm sure you had a great time. But now the next 30 years of your life are going to be kind of shit.
Yeah. Well, I think like two things pop up in my mind when you were talking about that is one, contextualizing time. So really realizing how long life actually is, and like being able to understand that and do what you need to do right now. And like I have been telling people like since I was 18 that like the whole age thing just doesn't make sense to me. Like life seems uncomfortably long. And I have a bias because I'm 21. I could definitely see somebody 35 hearing me say that, being like, oh, well, you just don't understand because you're 21. But, like, life is really, really long. Like, if you're able to make the most of it.
Yeah.
And make decisions that are going to give you a long life. And not just like, oh, I need this relief right now. Like something else that came up that we talked about in other episodes is just, like, looking for the quick dopamine. And that goes back into not being able to see the bigger picture. So I think, like, the biggest thing with me about like understanding the gap and understanding what you're doing today and how it's going to affect the future is like being able to see life as the whole thing and be like, how can I make the most of it? Like instead of enjoying the 10 years between 20 and 30 to work 40-hour weeks for the rest of your life, why don't you work 80 or 120-hour weeks for 10 years and then be able to like be free financially and stable and yoked and do be the person that you want to be
for the rest of your life. Yeah. I mean, there's a great quote by Seneca, who's a Stoic philosopher, and I'll probably butcher it, but it's basically that it's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste much of it.
Yeah.
And that's very true. We have a lot of time.
Yeah.
Like there's 12 hours every single day, and there's 356 days a year. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
If you know how to use it, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Do a plank for 5 minutes. You have a lot of time.
Yeah. Then damn, that's a good way to look at it. Do a plank for 5 minutes, and then you realize how much time you really have.
Yeah. So it's just about what you use that time for.
Yeah.
And now it is important that you enjoy the moments that you have. I think it's important to also enjoy your 20s, but there are people who just do nothing but enjoy their 20s at the expense of later in life.
It's all a balance.
Yeah.
It's all a balance, because like we've talked about before, and something you've taught me is that not taking the time to have the fun, not taking the time to relax,
it's counterproductive.
It's counterproductive.
It's like sleep. Some people see, you might, like if you're a workaholic, you might see sleep as being like a waste of time.
Yeah.
But really, sleep is probably some of the most important time out of your day.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's going to give you the boost that you need for the next 8 hours, the next 12 hours, or whatever.
Right.
So it's the same thing for just the time that you relax.
Yeah.
Like date night with Nicole, for example.
Yeah.
Or fucking playing a board game with the boys, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Like I have things that I do to relax, and you can take it too far too. Absolutely. That's what a lot of people do. They do take it too far.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a balance.
Well, and I think even like a product of my mindset around not having any fun things, or way less sleep than I need to have, is because I've seen what other people have done on this side and how they've taken it to the extreme. And so I have some fear around that.
Yeah.
And especially in my own life, because I've taken that to the extreme too.
The very extreme.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go out to the bar we're done, but I want to be happy, so let's shoot crystal meth for a living.
Yeah.
And so there's probably some fear that I'm taking from there that's powering me to be super, super ambitious and like despise free time, and I have to learn to bring it back this way, and like it's somewhere in the middle, and most of life is going to be trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it's trying to find that right balance. That's what virtue is all about. It's finding that middle ground between two extremes.
Yeah.
It's like there's if we take a look at like one virtue, for example, courage. You can be a total coward, or you can be a complete idiot. Like there's difference between being courageous and then being an idiot. So it's like finding that balance where you're not a coward, but you're also not completely reckless.
Yeah.
That's where courage is found.
Yeah, I find myself just swinging in every area of life, because I find something and I'm like, oh, this is really good. Let me do a lot of it, and then I'm like, oh wait, I did a little too much. Let me bring it back this way.
Yeah, and getting that right balance is very important. And the earlier you do it, the greater the gap will be later in life.
Hopefully, I'll be like just like a scale with two of the same weights on it by the time I'm 40. Perfect. I doubt it, but
I was reading the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, and he was talking about how he spent a lot of his life trying to achieve what he called moral perfection. And towards the end of his autobiography, he was talking about how he was never able to really achieve that balance that he really, really wanted, because every time he would get one area balanced, another area would become unbalanced. And so he was constantly moving from thing to thing to thing, because you can only focus your attention and your resources on really one or two things at a time.
Yeah.
So,
well, I sent you that video where I was listening to Jordan Peterson kind of talk about the same thing. Is that like, if you want to be amazing at one thing, like you're gonna see that reflect in all the other parts of your life.
Right. You can't really have a perfect balance. But what he did say is that by striving for that moral perfection, he was able to get closer to it than he ever could have gotten otherwise.
Yeah, just believing that it could be possible, even if it seemed completely impossible. And
striving for it.
Yeah.
Like if you, let's say I want to be a billionaire. If I strive to be a billionaire, I'm going to adopt certain habits, certain ways of thinking, certain things that are probably going to make me a millionaire at the least.
Yeah.
So that I might not ever make $1 billion,
right,
but I might make $100 million. And so
that's pretty damn good.
But then if I strive to say I want to be a millionaire, I want to have $1 million, I'll adopt a certain way of thinking, a certain way of doing things, but I might only have 500K or 300K.
Right.
So you want to aim above your mark.
Yeah.
There's another quote from a book I read by Machiavelli, The Prince. He talks about like this what is an allegory or a metaphor about an archer who's trying to hit a target. He doesn't aim at the target that's far away. He aims high above it. Yeah.
That's badass.
It was like when I read that allegory, I was like, that's a really cool quote. He put it way better because he's fucking Machiavelli and I'm not. But
yeah. No, that's badass. That's a good way to put it. No, I feel it. Do we have any concluding thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, your 30s are going to be what you make them.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be washed up at 30.
Age is but a number.
Yeah, it really is. It's just you're going to see, like any point in time is just going to be the results of everything you did before that. All of the habits you made, all the decisions you made, all of the circumstances you found yourself in, and how you responded to those circumstances. All of that's going to accumulate at a certain point in time. That's when your 30th birthday is going to look like. It's going to be the accumulation of all the decisions and things that happened in your life.
Right.
And what that looks like is largely up to you, because all of those circumstances you have an ability to respond to them in a certain way. That's a decision. All of those decisions you made were all yours to make. So, I mean, like, where you're at when you're 30 or 40 is on you, dude.
Yeah.
You can be jacked, you can be rich, you can be happy and successful, or you can be washed up and sad and fucking sucking on a shotgun, and it's it's up to you.
Well, and like one last point is that like you brought up something like really important, which is that there will be unpredictable circumstances. Like that's a fact of life, but what you do have is how you respond to them. If you walk into your day with as many good habits as you can have on that day and do your best and take care of yourself and make sure that at least the theme of your week or your month or your year is that you're trying to better yourself, you're going to be in a good place.
Yeah.
No, even if you have the worst possible shit happen to you, if you're able to hold that and be like, this is what I'm striving for, and on all the days that I can do these things and I can make it possible, I make it happen, you're going to be in a great place.
Yeah.
And there's nothing or nobody to tell you different.
Yeah, you do what you can with what you have where you are. Yeah.
I agree.
And and when you do that, the gap, just going back to the original thing, the gap you're going to see between you and other people in your age bracket, just because of the things that you did consistently over those decades, is going to be enormous, both in terms of your wealth, in terms of your skills, your social status, your looks, your health, all of it. It's going to be like night and day. You'll be walking down the street, you're going to see guys your age, and you're going to be like, what the fuck happened to you?
Yeah.
And they're going to look at you, and they're going to be like, what the fuck did you do? Because it's going to be night and day.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that might help, motivate you. If you want to feel like a king when you're 40, start taking action now.
Let's go.
I think those are my closing thoughts.
Good episode. We'll see you for 21.